It is now 1:01 p.m. I'd like to call this meeting of the WIFA Water Supply Development Committee to order. We'll do that with a roll call vote. Mr. Cook, Ted Cook.
Here.
Patrice Horseman.
Here.
Pete Kim. Absent. Jonathan Lyons.
Here.
Richard Lunt.
Present.
Sue Montgomery.
Here.
And Buchanan Davis is here. Quorum is confirmed and roll call is complete. For the record, please identify yourself when making a motion or requesting to speak. Make sure you're unmuted. And I think all of us are in person today. So we.
He's just absent.
He's absent. Okay. So if Pete joins us, he'll be virtual, but. All right, agenda item 2. Do we have any disclosures from members of the committee?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to recuse myself from item number 10.
We've got recusal from item number 10. Any others we've received from the staff?
Staff has not received any other disclosures.
Okay, sounds good. Moving to agenda item 3, the director's report. I'll pass it over to Director McGuire.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. A pretty short report today. Just appreciate all of the work that staff and committee have done to get ready for this. And we'll also note, as we're talking about our grants and loans split, that 60-40, we'll remind the committee that the resolution that you all gave to us and to the board outlining that desire does expire in July. So our goal, and we'll talk a little bit more about this in agenda development as well, our goal will be to bring you another committee meeting in May. So that'll put us a March, a May, and then the next regularly scheduled would be a July to give you the right timing to make adjustments to that resolution and to that directive as necessary. That's all I have, but happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Any questions for Director McGuire, for Chelsea? Great. We'll move on to our regular agenda. Agenda item number 4, Water Supply Development Revolving Fund Programmatic Discussion. Joe, will you lead the discussion?
Thank you, Chairman Davis. We're going to spend some time today going through the statutory authorities and rules and committee discretion. The role of the Water Supply Development Revolving Fund Committee in terms of making recommendations to the board, what this process looks like. We haven't really done a deep dive with you all on how this fund is supposed to operate. And so I will go through a little bit of a public presentation. At the end, I will recommend that you go into executive session so you can ask me questions specifically pertaining to legal advice about the presentation that you've received today. All right, so first thing here I wanted to touch base on is governance. You all are board members. This is maybe a little bit new of a role for you as committee members for some of you. Your role as a committee member is to review the applications as presented by staff and to issue recommendations to the WIFA Board of Directors. That reviewing role necessarily means that you're doing something a little bit different than the board is. You are doing a little bit of a deeper dive. You're doing some of the pre-work necessary for the board to make that decision. It also means that you have 2 opportunities to review these applications. You're going to be reviewing them at the committee level. You're also going to be voting on them at the board level. By statute, the board makes the final decisions. The board will review your recommendations. They will make those final decisions. And by statute, approval of any funding from the Water Supply Development Revolving Fund requires the affirmative vote of at least 6 voting members that are present at a meeting. So that's another wrinkle between the committee and the board. It's a simple majority vote to advance things through this committee. It does require a supermajority vote for funding to be approved at the board level.
Garrett, can you go to the next slide?
Yeah, my clicker decided to stop. Thanks, Garrett. Okay, let's talk a little bit about the statutory definitions for this program. First, eligible entities are the definition, the umbrella definition that you're working with here. And an eligible entity is a water provider or one of these public entities. These are the folks who are eligible to apply for financial assistance from the Water Supply Development Revolving Fund, whether that be a loan or a grant. And we can do next slide.
last bullet on the left side, correct?
Here we go.
Previous slide.
Can we back up here?
Less than 300,000?
Yeah,
Greater
less than 300,000 is
That's
the
greater than.
population. That's where that should be. Thank you.
Good catch.
And we'll go back to the next slide. So we have been routinely dealing with the first two purposes of the Water Supply Development Revolving Fund, but please know that there are 5 different things that the Water Supply Development Fund the monies in that fund can be used for. Loans up to $3 million, grants up to $2 million, as everyone knows, purchasing or refinancing water providers' debt obligations similar to the SRF programs, similar things with the bond, and lastly was funding water supply studies on there as well. So there's quite a bit of actual mechanisms to be used through that program. I'm going to talk about loans because loans are one of the bigger programs that we have, and it's one of the things that the statute actually does provide some guidance on. These are the things that are explicitly required by statute for loans. It's not that long of a list because the rest of it is very flexible and up to authority discretion. We'll touch a little bit about that later, but these are the things that are explicitly required. Has to be evidenced by bond or a loan repayment agreement. We do have a loan repayment agreement portion for the Water Supply Development Revolving Fund. It does require a dedicated revenue source for repaying any loan portion. The authority determines the repayment period and terms, and the interest rate cannot exceed the prevailing market rate. Those are the statutory requirements for loans. Next slide. Assurances. I make a note here because this is one of those flexible statutory authority provisions I was talking about. The authority can condition approval of financial assistance on assurances deemed necessary to comply with the law and application terms. Generally, this would happen through perhaps a committee recommendation that's formalized into a board decision that's adopted through a resolution. Staff would then take that requirement and either incorporate it through the resolution into the financial assistance agreement or do whatever else was necessary otherwise. But this is a power available to the authority, to the committee, and to the board. So keep that in mind as you are reviewing applications. If there is something that you need assurances on in order to make sure that this is going to be, handled according to the law and according to what you're trying to make the funding do, you have that authority. Okay. And I think we're finishing up with this one. There might be one more slide, but these are the project order and priority categories. These are the things that we use to evaluate these applications as they come in. This is what staff will present a report to you with these considering. This is what the committee is going to look at in making its recommendations to the board as well. So there's a sort of a two-part process in evaluating these applications. Staff is going to conduct an objective scoring analysis based on our procedure and our policy, and staff doesn't deviate from that scoring. We have things written down. We have policies that have been passed that direct us how to do that scoring. That scoring will be the same from staff every time. When you get to the committee level, the committee is going to review that, and you do have discretion for looking at these categories of things in making your recommendations. I'll point out here, the last one on this slide is other criteria deemed appropriate. This is a flexible fund. There are flexible solutions that are going to be introduced and offered to you, and you may need to have some flexibility in your analysis. I think it's very important that that's a statutory criteria that you get to look at, and I would just remind you that this is not an exhaustive list. So if you deem something to be appropriate in your review or analysis, it's important to state that on the record as part of your recommendation. Staff would, of course, take that and then bring it up to the board. Is there one more slide, Garrett? Or do we move on to the next one? No, okay, we'll go back then. If there are any questions on the public portion of this, because if not, I would recommend that to further discuss the committee's statutory authority, discretion, and duties, I'd recommend you meet in executive session for discussing and consulting with legal counsel on legal advice regarding this presentation.
Joe, before take that motion, I think it's helpful to know or to note that sort of our role as a committee is different than our role as board members. As a committee, we have the obligation to kind of flesh this out, to make policy statements, to make determinations, to weigh options, to all of that. Maybe you could talk a little bit more about that.
Sure, yeah, and it's statutory as well. This committee is statutorily established. It's under ARS 49-1208, and the Water Supply Development Committee shall review applications for financial assistance from the Water Supply Development Revolving Fund and make recommendations to the board regarding those applications for assistance. It's very different from the statutory authority for actually granting those, which is found in ARS 49-1274D, where the authority shall review on its merits each application received and inform the applicant of the authority's determinations. One statutory requirement there is if the application is not approved, we have to notify the applicant and state the reasons.
Okay, interesting.
That is the exact statutory authority as well. I'm not paraphrasing that. It's notify and state the reasons. Very different from here are the reasons where you can deny and you must pick one of them. There's a lot of discretion granted to this body in those types of funding decisions by statute.
Other questions for Joe?
Well, I hesitate to ask for an example because I'm sure that we'll have plenty of opportunities to flesh that out. But I appreciate the explanation of the possibility.
Could you turn your mic on, Jonathan?
Dang mics. Anyway, I appreciate the opportunity to kind of flesh that out and understand what is feasible. And I look forward to determining the other criteria deemed appropriate.
I'd entertain a motion
I'll make a motion
about,
that we
about executive session.
adjourn into executive session.
Mr. Chairman, I'll second.
Okay, motion and a second.
And to clarify, that is for the purposes of obtaining legal advice on agenda item 4 pursuant to ARS 38-431.03A3.
Please
That
add
was
that
what I
to my
was gonna
motion.
That is correct. Thanks for that clarification. We've got a motion and a second. If there's no further discussion, we'll call for a vote. All of those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, abstained? All right, we'll move to executive session. Here. Present.
Here.
And Buchanan Davis is here. So we got out of executive session. The committee was able to review some of the relevant statutes and rules governing the committee's review and recommendation process with the general counsel. We explored that further and discussed some of the discretionary authority to recommend approval or denials of applications. And based on own individual merits and ensure that all of our concerns, reasoning, and rationale for recommending projects are clearly presented for the benefit of current and future applicants. As we move back into public session, are there comments based off of what we learned from legal counsel and some of the advice that we obtained? Are there comments, a discussion to be had out here based off of what we heard?
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Mr. Cook.
Thank you. Well, I'll give it a go. I think the easy answer is yes, there are. I'm glad we had this discussion. I'm glad that you, Mr. Chairman, and the staff identified the need, if I can use that word, for us to have the discussion that we had and get the advice that we got in executive session. It added a lot of clarity for me, not enough, but some clarity to some of the questions that I was going to raise today as part of our open session agenda. So this will take care of something I need to do today anyways. So I think it'll actually be better a little bit in this context. I think all of the committee members, maybe to only slightly lesser extent because they're not members on the committee, the rest of the board, maybe a little bit less so, but we're all aware of the fact that based on the resolution that this committee passed a couple of meetings ago, that we have, in order to help the water supply development revolving fund to actually be a revolving fund, establish some rules for ourselves about how much of our available funding we're going to dedicate to grants and how much will be available for loans. And that amount, I think, is $60 million for grants. If we look at the project priority list, which is a handy document to look at that is part of the agenda packet for today, it is likely that we will have more requests for grants than our own self-imposed limit, and that point at which we will reach that is hard to predict, but it will probably come upon us in a way that feels like it's sudden. In fact, the resolution that this committee adopted was much needed because there were some discussions that this committee had earlier, including an open session about should we wait until we have all the applications fully in, including with the what is it called, the FPA? PFA. The project finance addendum, or whatever that stands for. Should we demand that those who are requesting grants who can unless they can demonstrate they can't afford it, must take a loan to go with the grants? So I won't get into all the things, but this resolution that we adopted was a way in part to deal with some of those questions that we as a committee have. So it was very helpful. However, we have something else that I referred to besides this policy. We've got the project priority list itself, and we do that on our other funds. We have a project priority list in some of our other funds. It's a useful tool. It is populated by the staff with rules that are developed from the statutes and other policies that we have, and it should be a guide to this committee in our decision making and the board. So I'm getting to the point here. My issue is that because of the way that we have been approaching the approvals of projects that come to this committee, we are really not making use of the project priority list. Specifically, we have on today's agenda and in previous agendas have got projects that are fairly low on the project priority list, but because they've completed all of their applications, they are coming before these committees, and we find ourselves in danger of essentially ignoring the project priority list because it's a first come first serve type program, not a merit based type of approach. So we, in my opinion, need to, and I'm not suggesting or making a motion, need to think about things such as how do we deal with this? We can ignore it. We can do something to the project priority list so that it reflects in some way readiness to proceed, which is something that we do on some of our other funds. In other words, those who are higher up that haven't completed all their application process move down, and those who are lower on the list that have completed their application process move up, so that at least even optically looks better that we're not putting lower priority projects ahead of the higher priority projects and find ourselves with no money left for those higher priority projects, and they're higher priority for a reason. So we can ignore it, this cognitive dissonance. We can do something to improve the project priority list, or we can just wait, and there's probably other options to wait until all of the projects have submitted their applications and then have a discussion in this committee of which ones are we going to award or not. So this is not a problem that's on the agenda to solve, but it is something that I wanted to bring up before we get into this list, because we have some fairly low scoring things on here. I, for one, my personal philosophy and policy for myself as a committee member and a board member is, once we, I'll use a term I don't like, litigate something at this level and come to agreement at the committee and bring something forward to the board, I'm not going to then take a second bite at the apple and try to go and convince the board of the things where I was on the losing end of something, let's say, of a discussion that happened at this committee. But I think we're going to find ourselves in those type of situations unless we have quickly more discussion about how are we fair? How do we make sure that we have lots of flexibility. We all saw an open session and heard more about an executive session about the flexibility that we have in various areas, but we can't just make stuff up, and we can't be arbitrary and capricious. In other words, not have a reason for why we do what we're doing. And it's getting, for me at least, perilously close to making it up and not having a good reason for doing what we're doing. We have reasons. For instance, this funding has occurred for a purpose from the governor's office and the legislature. We want to use it for those purposes. We want to use it for those purposes expeditiously, so that it doesn't get converted to another use or things like that. So all of these things weigh into this, but we're just, in my mind, and then I'll shut up after this sentence, barreling toward this finish line that we've established of $60 million, and I don't think I'm going to be satisfied with that outcome once we get there, unless we quickly grapple with some of these issues. Thanks for letting me get the ball rolling.
No,
Hopefully the ball is not flat at this point.
No.
No, thank you, Mr. Cook, for that commentary, that discussion. I think you summed up a lot right there that we were all feeling and mulling over. Are there other comments in this regard on this topic? What we heard and just generally I'll say is, what we've heard is, this fund is still very new in its current configuration. We're still trying to figure things out, and we're still trying to set it up and put the money to work to the best use. And we've learned that there is a lot of discretion that this committee has an obligation to try to find that balancing act, and we will continue to decide and contemplate different policies and policy positions, and then as individual members of the committee, we'll sort of decide where we want to put our support and where we don't. And I think that will continue to inform the process, and we're grateful for those who are applying, who are helping us get this off the ground and make things move and work. And one of the things that I'll just point out is, statutorily, we might have a lot of flexibility. There might be projects that we can fund, but it doesn't mean we have to, and it doesn't mean that we should. And so that's part of what this committee gets to decide. And so if that's important for public to know and understand, and members of the committee and the board to understand, is there might be statutory authority to do something, but that doesn't mean that it is a have to, and it doesn't mean that we should, and it doesn't mean that we will. And so that's part of this process. So,
Mr. Chair.
yes, Mr. Sue.
Yeah, Sue Montgomery, I didn't want Mr. Cook's comments to be on the record without making sure that he knew and the board or the committee knew I support them. I mean, I see exactly what you're saying. I didn't see it as well until our discussion today, and I'm grateful for it because that project priority list has sort of eluded me as we've gone through trying to address the projects that are in front of us at each meeting. And so knowing, the way you've explained it and the fact that we are barreling towards sort of addressing the ones that are in front of us, but they may not be the ones that are high or that are scored where we want them on the project priority list, really worries me. And I don't think it's something we can sit on. I think it's something that we, as you said, it wasn't agendized for this meeting, but it's something we need to work expeditiously to sort of reconvene on. So you said a lot of things, and I just wanted you to know from my perspective, I agree with what you're saying, and I've learned a few things, so thank you.
Other comments? Our next agenda item actually is talking about the project priority lists. And so if there's no further discussion on the agenda item 4, then we'll move to agenda item 5. And Lindsay will lead the discussion about our project priority list, current status, and that might be an opportunity for some further discussion that we've just had.
All right, thank you. We can go forward. Thank you, Garrett. So definitely great discussion on the last agenda item, and hopefully some of the discussion I have right now will help alleviate a little of the concerns that I'm hearing. But I'll just start with, in total, and we can go to the next slide. So our project priority list now has over 100 million requested applications. We've had, since the last time we presented this to you, a few new projects submit. There was a few that removed from consideration, as well as a few other changes. We noted all of those changes in the staff comments within agenda item 5 in your materials. The total approved in the screen, that was approved prior to this morning's board meeting. So just an update for you all. The board actions this morning bring the total amount approved to 43.1 million and the amount in grants approved to 34.7 million. Since we have more in grant requests than the 60 million, which is available through that resolution, we have included a double horizontal line on that project priority list. And staff's commitment is that we are not going to be presenting projects that have a grant component that are falling below that double line. So all of the projects on your list for the agenda today are above that double line, meaning there should be grant amounts available if the committee and board decided to approve those. But that is very much the point in case is that just because they are higher ranked in the list, just because they are above that double line does not indicate that the committee and board has to approve those. That's always up to your discretion. But it is one way that we're trying to make sure we're not having the problem of the first come, first serve. Just because they got us in that project finance application does not mean they're automatically added to an agenda. They have to be above that double line if they have a grant component to it. It does still get complicated because we're going to continue to get new applications submitted. We continue to have current applications who they're working on, doing an income survey or something else that would help improve their points. And so it's a little bit of a moving target, but hopefully having that double line gives you a little bit of assurances that the projects before you today would not be taking away the grant funds from someone who is currently higher ranked than them that is still working on getting us application materials. For today's agenda, we'll have the 10 projects that are in the light blue. 2 of those are the repeat projects, but total requesting just over 17.8 million, with 14.8 million of that being in grant funds. And I think that was the main updates for you. We can go to the next slide, which is just a reiteration of where we're seeing the applications come in. It hasn't changed much since the last time we presented this to you. So large amount of the conveyance, about half of the amount in recharge. But I'm happy to take any questions about that, especially about that double line.
Yes, do we have, Mr. Cook?
Well, this is just a clarification. So I've been searching frantically for the double line.
And I'm sorry, we can make it
I'm
something.
looking in the middle of each one of the pages that constitute the project part of it. It's at the bottom of the page, after project number 43.
Yeah, it's really hard to
But
say.
and I also would
Okay.
like the opportunity to point out that, as a slide that we had up a moment ago, so this committee has approved 20 million approximately in grants so far. And we have 15 approximately million more in grants on our agenda for today. So this is what I mean by barreling through. This line is a good thing. I'm glad it's there. But it doesn't necessarily, it doesn't, and it's not intended to imply that everybody who's 43 and above is safe and everybody who's 43 and below, because that's not the way we're doing it. What we're doing it is whoever gets done first.
That's right.
Yes, Mr. Luck.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, and I understand what Mr. Cook and Ms. Montgomery are saying. To me, then maybe we have to change it the way we're doing, where we don't evaluate these or contribute or approve any loans until all loans are in. And I know it'll slow it down, but they have a ranking and we can look at all of them, because right now, Mr. Cook, you're right, we're first come, first serve, and of course, I was always taught, raised on the farm, the early bird gets the worm, but if that is a real concern of the committee, and it is, then maybe we're gonna have to change our procedure, and there's a deadline, and we will evaluate all the applications to that point, and we will use a matrix or whatever we've been doing, and we will evaluate those, and because like you say, right now, we get a group here, we get a group here, and maybe there are projects that have more credence than other projects that we're approving, but we're out of money, and so your point is well taken, but maybe we need to change, if that's the problem, maybe we need to change the way we're doing this, and that means that the committee will have instead of just in blocks, we're gonna have a waylay bunch of applications to go through, and anyway, so those are my comments.
That's a good comment, and maybe something that we can bring back in agenda item 17, but staff, take note that maybe that's something that we can discuss as exploring funding cycles and different ways of approaching these applications. Other comments?
I can
Yes.
just real quick, Patrice Horseman. Obviously, I agree with Mr. Cook that we have a problem unless we just go with the philosophy as first in, the early bird gets the worm. And unless we go with that philosophy, I think we really do need to look at other options. And I would look forward to, at the next meeting, get some staff involvement, some staff recommendations of other ways to do this, because, you're right, just, my limited thinking on it, the only other way I can see is we wait until all the applications are before us. But that creates a delay, and there's some real pros and cons in terms of that. So I would really look forward to also seeing if there are some other options, other ideas from the staff on this.
Mr. Chairman, before
Yes,
we continue,
Mr. Lyons.
I'm gonna step into the other room real quick,
Okay,
and I'll be back.
that sounds good. Thanks for letting us know. Other comments on agenda item 5? All right, we'll move on to agenda item 6. Let's see here. agenda item 6 is our recommendation on financial assistance resolution 2025-053, City of Bisbee. Lindsay, will you lead us?
Absolutely. So this agenda item, as well as agenda item 7, are the repeat agenda items from the previous committee meeting for the 2 City of Bisbee applications. So we did add extensive staff comments into your committee materials. I'll go ahead and just read those for you regarding the question of if the 2 applications represent 2 separate projects or 1 project. So at the February 19th meeting, the committee members requested staff work with Bisbee to obtain clarity on the relationship between the pump project, which is WSD 032-2025, and the pipeline project, WSD 033-2025. Specifically, the applicant was asked to explain whether the project represents 2 distinct water supply projects. When asked for additional justification for treating them as separate projects, the applicant responded by explaining that the pump project and the pipeline project are interdependent. However, there may be future opportunities for the pump project to facilitate recharge in other locations, including Arizona Water Company's well field. The applicant also indicated there is likely financing available for the pipeline project from other non-WIFA sources, and noted that while no NEPA process has been initiated, they indicated the pump project is not located on federal lands and currently does not have federal funding committed, so NEPA likely will not apply. Conversely, NEPA will be required for the pipeline because it does cross federal lands, and it's likely that BLM or Department of Defense would be the lead federal agency. However, the applicant further indicated that the Cochise Conservation and Recharge Network would consider this one big project, which would include the recharge basin downstream, and there will be one NEPA process for the entire project. Based on the information provided by the applicant, staff cannot confirm that the 2 applications should be considered as 2 separate projects. And additionally, due to the location of the proposed recharge, staff has concerns regarding whether these projects will result in a water supply development benefit to the applicant. Based on the applicant's explanation, the project benefits to mitigate threats to the alluvial aquifer supporting the San Pedro Riparian National Conservation Area. Staff is unclear as to whether this constitutes a water supply benefit to the applicant. And with that, I'll open it up for questions. We should have the applicant's representatives available if you have any questions for the applicant.
First, are there any questions for staff, for Lindsay or WIFA staff? Do we have any questions from the committee or the applicant?
Well, Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I didn't know if you wanted to address the 2 project issue first or other pieces of this relative to the staff's recommendation about how this might actually provide a water supply. I can't quote you, but basically a water supply project.
I think we can have that discussion. We can, if we want to have a discussion or talk to staff about some of that or delve into further. Sounds like staff saying it's a little bit nebulous there. It's, we've got some discretion there.
Well, I mean, I have some concerns that I want to raise, and I do want to ask the applicant about some of my concerns. But on the 1 project or 2 project issue, my view of this is to be clear, is that this is one interdependent project. And when we're looking for grant funds, at least my concern is that we're going to have 2 bites at the grant fund apple when we have limited grant funds to begin with. And so we're sort of segmenting what really is 1 project and by bifurcating it, you're getting 2 bites at the grant. And that concerns me. I don't know what other board members feel about that, but that's one issue. And then I do have additional concerns with this particular one. And as we talked about, I'm wearing my committee hat here, which I feel like I've been trained from our Water Conservation Grant Fund Committee that we need to be diligent and we need to really look at these. And so, you know, I have looked at this. I know other members of this committee have looked at it. So I would raise some additional issues. But on that, that's my view on the 2 project issue. To me, this is 1 project and it should be only eligible for 1 bite at the grant.
Are there other Yes.
I agree with that concern. I have that concern as well. If it was all the money in the world, we may not have to worry about it, but we do not have all the money in the world. And so, these are interdependent. I don't think one exists without the other. I think basically it's one project as well. And for purposes of, review here by our committee, I think we should look at it as one project.
Do we have any questions on the applicant on that? Maybe I do. If I could be, if the applicant's available to answer this question, if the committee were to deem that it was one project and you couldn't get two separate grants, where would be the priority for the applicant? Do we have someone?
Yeah. Hi, this is Steve Walken. Can you hear me?
Yep. Go ahead, Steve. Thanks for being here.
All right, thanks. And I believe we touched on that a month ago. And I'm perceiving that the way we're going to go here is one project. And so my answer last month, and it remains, that if we can just do one project, then what we would ask for is to do the supply pumps. As you know, the CCNR is 6 or 7 partners. That includes the county, includes the Department of Defense, BLM and others, City of Sierra Vista. And the entire project is going to require several different components and pots of money. We believe that the best approach for the city of Bisbee's part is to do the supply pumps. And because right now we're contemplating the recharge project to the river, but we also are in the talking stages of supplying water back to the Arizona Water Company well field. And so I can strategically deal through that pumping system. I can move from there in both directions, and I can supply enough water to both of them.
That leads to another question, and maybe this leads to some of Sue's concerns. But you're saying if you build the supply pumps, that gives you maybe some flexibility down the road on where you're going to build your pipeline, whether to recharge Arizona Water's fields or in the current project, it's down the river ways. So, how did you determine where you were going to recharge in this process? What made that determination?
Well, what made that determination is that we've been working for about 5 years now to put together the recharge to the San Pedro River. It's only within the last year or year and a half that Arizona Water has expressed interest in also obtaining water from our wastewater treatment plant to recharge their well field as well. So we're in the middle of well, we're not in the middle of anything right now. We had a 5-year agreement to supply water to Cochise County for their recharge at the San Pedro. And we are yet to do the same thing with Arizona Water Company, but we just approved a new contract with Cochise County to supply water to them at the rate of a minimum of 200 acre feet per year. Our latest numbers coming out of the discharge point of the wastewater treatment plant are somewhere in the neighborhood of 400 acre feet a year. So we can simultaneously supply both.
Okay, that's helpful. Other questions for the applicant?
Well, Mr. Chairman, I have a
Yes,
couple of questions.
Sue, please.
So when I looked at this, I had a couple questions came to mind, thinking about, sorry, Sue Montgomery, a couple of questions that came to mind for the applicant, thinking about this and thinking about, does this actually benefit the water supply needs in some form of Bisbee? And when I looked at this, what I saw, when I tried to understand where you were discharging and what we would be funding, and please tell me if I'm wrong, because I really want to understand that you will be building your pipeline coming from your wastewater treatment plant, and that pipeline will exit the existing AMA and discharge water adjacent on the other side of the west side of the river, adjacent to the San Pedro Riparian Conservation Corridor, our National Conservation Area. So that you are taking your water that you're producing in the AMA, and you are taking it outside the AMA and discharging it in close proximity to the Verde River to, as you have stated in your application, to support base flows and riparian habitat in Sprinka, which to me means you're discharging into the alluvial aquifer of Sprinka, and that water and San Pedro River, and that water is then, I don't want to say lost to the San Pedro River, but I don't see how that supports the water supply needs of the aquifer for Arizona Water Company that supplies Bisbee. Am I wrong? I know I have some assumptions in there of my own, but factually, am I correct there or not?
Well, you might be and you might not be. But you probably want a better answer than that, right, Sue?
Well, I actually think I'm correct. Am I correct that you're taking water that you're producing in your wastewater treatment plant and you're moving it outside the AMA to the west side where you're going to do the infiltration into the base flows San Pedro?
Well, first of all, the wastewater treatment plant is not in an AMA.
Okay.
All right. The water is pumped from well fields at Naco, Arizona. Okay. Not in the AMA.
That I know.
It's pumped to customers in the city of Bisbee. And then after the customers in the city of Bisbee use the water, as they will, that water then is discharged back to the San Jose wastewater treatment plant for treatment. Okay. So the water comes from the same basin, if you will, or aquifer, and is returned to that. So it never moves. I know there's this Douglas AMA thing that I know you're aware of. And I know a little bit of the city of Bisbee is in that AMA. But the production of the water and the treatment of the water all take place outside of that AMA.
That's very helpful. So where you're discharging now from your wastewater treatment plant, you're discharging into, is it Green Brush Draw?
Green Bush, yeah.
Green Bush Draw. And when I plotted your outfall and I looked at your discharge point, it seems to be in close proximity to Arizona Water Company's existing Bisbee wells.
That's correct.
So what you're going to do then is, and maybe we could talk about the amount of water, and maybe that's where I'm off track here. But what I see now is what you're doing is you're taking the water, at least as your application states it, and understanding that I think we're looking initially at 200 acre feet. You're taking water that you would normally be putting into Green Bush Draw,
right,
near Arizona Water Company wells that serve you. And yes, they are not in the AMA, but they are within 3.5 miles of the boundary of the AMA. And then you're moving that water, rather than discharging it into the Green Brush or continuing to discharge into Green Brush, now you're moving it much further outside the AMA on the other side of the mountain range and on the other side of San Pedro, and discharging it into the alluvial aquifer to support base flows for the San Pedro.
Okay. Now, Dr. Holly Richter is plugged into this meeting. I don't know. Can you unmute her?
Dr. Richter, I've enabled your mic. You can just unmute yourself and
That'd
you'll
be
be able
great.
to respond.
What I would like to have Holly do is answer that question, Sue, because she's our scientist.
I appreciate it, and I'm not trying to grill you, but I am trying to understand this.
Oh, no, but she can answer the question much better than I can. So
I'm sure she can. Thank
I
you.
would prefer that she does. Go ahead, Holly.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Great,
Go
great,
ahead.
yeah. No, these were questions, Sue, that we asked from the very beginning. And when we started to present this idea to the Bisbee City Council, we actually did some mod flow groundwater modeling with a consultant to look at the trade-offs of kind of the distribution of these recharge locations and how they would impact groundwater levels, both at the supply wells as well as at the San Pedro River. And so some of those modeling simulations were made public. What they told us was that the groundwater levels near the supply wells, yes, there was some decrease in those levels, but compared to the benefits that were accrued at the river, it seemed like the trade-offs were well worth it in terms of the importance of maintaining groundwater levels at both locations. So yes, there were trade-offs. There were extensive technical studies done to try to balance and understand those needs. And we believe that we've really come to a proposal here that really meets both the people, the needs of both the community and this national asset that's so important to our region.
I just have one follow-up question.
Please.
So just one follow-up question, Holly, and I really appreciate you being here and helping me understand this. And I really appreciate the attention that you're giving to this and the work that's been done thus far. So the discharge that supports the base flow of the San Pedro and that we're discussing here, how does that support as this project is proposed right now, how does that support water supply for Bisbee?
I would say that it is a balance of how to continue to support recharge near those supply wells, while also supporting a national asset which our whole regional economy depends on. And of course, there's a lot of threatened and endangered species that depend on it, and that impacts a lot of our major employers in the region. There's a lot of complexity to our water issues here. But I will say that it's not like we completely sacrificed the water needs of Bisbee to meet those national and federal water needs, but we tried to find a happy balance, and we almost need to share those very detailed modeling scenarios with you to describe. I don't have those numbers completely committed to memory, but I can tell you that it sustains the ongoing water needs of Bisbee while also meeting the water needs of the Spurka. And at least that was the modeling outcomes that we shared with the city council years ago. And we can certainly do that again if that's helpful for you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other comments, discussion, questions? Do we have any requests from the public on this item?
We do not, Mr. Chairman.
Do we have any motions on this item? For clarification, staff, which item is item 6 or item 7 that is the supply pumps?
Item number 6 would be for the supply pumps, and item number 7 would be for the water line.
Chair.
Yes.
Based on the discussion up to this point, which may or may not be enough for all the members of the committee, I would move that we approve agenda item number 6, WSD 032 2025 for $1,992,000.
We've got a motion. Do we have a second?
Mr. Chair, I will second that. I'm still not clear on why the second one where they're going to why they wouldn't be able to seek funds from the feds to do that project.
All right, we've got a motion and a second on agenda item 6. If there's no further discussion, we will call for a vote. Let's do a roll call vote.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will call, and again, as a reminder to committee members, the motion is to approve agenda item number 6 for the city of Bisbee. Mr. Cook,
Aye.
Ms. Horstman,
Can I explain my vote?
Please.
I'm voting no, and the reason is I certainly understand how it's affecting the San Pedro Riparian National Conservation Area, and I think that's important. But given what our mission is to do here today in this committee, I haven't been able to determine how it sustains the water needs of Bisbee.
Mr. Kim, Mr. Lyons, Mr. Lunt,
I vote aye.
Ms. Montgomery.
Mr. Chairman, explain my vote.
Yes, please.
Yeah, totally supportive of projects to support the San Pedro and understand completely the need to protect endangered species, the need to support riparian habitat, and how that supports their regional economy and is such an important lifeline for migratory species and all these things. I mean, I truly do. But we have had a long discussion about how we are barreling toward a cliff here on the grant money we have. And in looking at this, it may be statutorily permitted, but in terms of the discretion that we have for my vote, I may no, because I can't see how this project truly benefits Bisbee, or benefits in a way with enough clarity that it ranks for my vote and really over other projects. So for that reason, respectfully to all the work Bisbee's doing and to the recharge projects they're doing down there, I have to be a no. Thank you.
And Mr. Chairman.
I will vote aye on agenda item 6.
Mr. Chair, the vote was 3 yes, 2 no, 2 not voting.
Thank you for all of this discussion there. We'll move to agenda item 7. We've kind of heard them together, so we have the facts of both 6 and 7 together. Do we have a motion on agenda item 7?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Mr. Cook.
may I ask a question of the general counsel?
Yes.
So, Joe, if this item fails because of a lack of a motion, does it have a chance to be brought up again, or would it be preferable if the will of this committee is that this item does not go forward, that we have a motion to deny it?
If I'm understanding the question correctly, it wouldn't fail because of lack of a motion. You essentially have to have a motion on it, or you need to table it. So there needs to be some action from this committee to do something with that. If you are asking if the committee puts it up for a vote, perhaps an approval vote, and it doesn't receive the number of votes recommended to approve that, we would bring that to the board and say it did not receive approval, and this was the vote.
Thank you. In that case, I move that the committee recommended the board to deny this application.
And I will second that.
We have a motion and a second to deny this application on agenda item 7. Is there further discussion? If not, we'll call for the vote. All those in favor can say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstained? We'll note that Jonathan was not here for the vote, nor was Pete Kim. The vote carries to recommend denial to the board. We'll move to agenda item 8. Recommend for approval of financial assistance resolution 2025-063. This is for Cedar Grove Water Company. Lindsay, would you lead us in the discussion?
Absolutely. So Cedar Grove Water Company is requesting $1.493 million to upgrade their water infrastructure in Vernon, Arizona and Apache County. They plan to add a deep well, a 300,000-gallon storage tank, and a new interconnection with Lord Arizona Water Systems. The project also includes 2,500 feet of water mains, valves, and a SCADA system to enhance reliability and capacity. During the 5 years reviewed, Cedar Grove Water Inc. had 2 loans, one with WIFA paid off in FY 2020 and one with CoBank maturing in 2041. As of 2024, the system's net operating revenue was at a level just covering its debt services, resulting in a debt service coverage ratio of 1.00 times. So revenue available for debt service for the next 5 years ranges significantly, but it is occasionally below the 1.2 times required to qualify for WIFA loan. Cedar Grove is in the process of getting a rate increase of 34%, is waiting for final ruling from the ACC. Pursuant to WIFA policies for the Water Supply Fund and procedures, this project does qualify for 100% grant consideration. The applicant's representatives should be in the audience with us today if there's any questions. And I believe that's all I have for you.
All right. Any questions for Lindsay or staff? Do we have questions for the applicant? Any requests from the public to speak on this item?
No, Mr. Chair.
You? All right. We'll have any discussion amongst the committee. If there's no discussion, I'd entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, go ahead.
Yes, hi, Patrice Horseman. I would recommend Resolution 2025-063, Cedar Grove Water, Inc., WSD-056-2025, in the amount of $1.493 million.
We got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? If no further discussion, we'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstained? The motion passes. We'll move to agenda item number 9. Recommend for approval financial assistance 2025-064, Lord Arizona Water Systems. Lindsay?
Thank you. So we have Lord Arizona Water Systems, who's requested $1.4 million. This project would connect the Lord system with the Vernon Valley Water Company, Inc. through the installation of approximately 9,800 feet of water mains. The interconnection will provide additional and dependable water protection sources to both companies and will also extend the water system to current landowners who often haul water because they don't have access to the public water system. There will be a booster station constructed as well as a SCADA system added and 2 pressure reducing stations added. Finally, the Lord Arizona system has numerous transmission line dead ends and plan to connect the dead end lines to make a loop system for their water system. In the summer of 2023, the system experienced failure in 2 out of 3 of their wells over the weekend before 4th of July. And as a result, the company filed and obtained approval of an emergency rate increase from the ACC. The system's 2021 rate increase generated additional revenue, and currently no further increases are scheduled. However, the owner plans to use the 2025 as a test year and seek a rate adjustment from the ACC in 2026. This is a small rural utility and certainly struggles to maintain positive cash flows. If this request was a loan, the annual payments would surpass the revenues available. Pursuant to water supply procedures, this project does qualify for 100% grant consideration, and we have the same applicant representatives in the audience with us today.
Thank you. So beyond interconnection, this will also expand access, and some of the users who now are hauling water might have access to water. Is that?
That's our understanding, yes.
Okay. Any other questions for Lindsay or staff? Do we have questions for the applicant? Any requests to speak from the public on this item?
No, Mr. Chair.
There's no further discussion. I'd entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, I would so move that we approve agenda item, let's see, that's 9. And once again, I believe this is one of the reasons these funds were allocated, and I know this committee's struggling with loan versus gift, but I think some of these small things, I was pleased that they are seeking rate increases. That's always concern to me. Are they trying to help themselves? And if we can help them, I'm all for that. So I move that we support agenda item 9.
We've got a motion. Do we have a second?
Mr. Chairman, I second that. Sue Montgomery.
Sue Montgomery seconds. If there's no further discussion, we'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstained? All right, the motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Moving on to agenda item 10. Recommend for approval financial assistance resolution 2025-065. I'll note that Jonathan Lyons has recused himself, but he has recused himself physically, so we will, staff will lead us to the discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we have Yuma County with their application for $2 million. I will note this is the first of 3 applications that you'll see on your agenda requesting a similar project to install hydro panels for residents. So Yuma County is proposing, in partnership with a nonprofit organization, to provide 200 low-income households with hydro panels, which are drinking water systems. The systems are estimated to produce up to 60 gallons per month of drinking water by extracting moisture from the air, which could provide a reliable water source that operates independently of surface or groundwater supplies. We did note that the homeowners would be responsible for future maintenance costs. The proposal does include a 3-year service agreement that covers parts and labor for the first 3 years. However, after that, the additional costs are the homeowner's responsibility and would not be the responsibility of the county. If the request was treated as a loan, staff analysis indicates the county's revenues could support the required loan payments. And then pursuant to water supply procedures, this project does qualify for 100% grant consideration. And I believe that's all I have. Do you have any questions?
Do we have questions for Lindsay or staff on this item?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, please, Sue.
So after the 3-year maintenance plan or whatever, who maintains these panels?
My understanding, it's the homeowner's requirement to maintain the panels.
And do we have a cost estimate and understanding what those homeowners would be paying for the sort of OM&R or what it costs to maintain those panels? Is that in anything the applicant provided?
I don't believe so, but we can ask the applicant if they have more information on that if you'd like.
And then what is did they provide what the lifespan of these panels is? Like the life of the project?
It's a good question as well.
Maybe we should just ask the
Yeah,
applicant.
is the applicant available?
If you are the applicant for this particular application, we have Veronica Garcia from Yuma listed. Veronica, I don't see you on the list, but I do see a few people who are just called Grants. So, all right, looks like maybe it's one of you. I've unmuted or enabled your mic. You'll just have to unmute yourself and you can speak.
All right, good afternoon. Can you all hear me okay?
Yes.
All right, hello. Yes, my name is Veronica Garcia. I am the grants administrator here with Yuma County. I believe on the line we also have one of the representatives from our Colin Godard. He's from the actual panel company, the water panel. So I believe, as far as I know, the lifespan of these panels are about a 15-year lifespan. And with this grant, we did include like a warranty area where, you know, time frame for the 3 years so that the homeowner didn't need to come up with those costs up front. But after that, I believe Colin might be able to answer that question specifically. I don't have that answer. I don't know if you could unmute Colin.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, this is Colin Goddard from Source. Can you hear me?
Yes, thanks, Colin.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, after the 3-year period of the consumables, it is approximately $80 per household per year to cover the annual consumable replacement costs.
And you agree with the life estimate of the panels that was provided?
Yes, ma'am.
What about the power consumption issues?
These hydro panel systems are fully off-grid. They do not require external power to operate, provide water, store it, or dispense it for use.
So there's no exceedance of the power. The solar generates all of the power needed to operate these?
Yes, ma'am.
If I may, Mr.
Yes, Ms. Horstman.
Yes, hi, Patrice Horseman. I have a couple questions too. You say the hydro panels can provide about 60 gallons a month of clean drinking water. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am. That's up to 60 gallons of drinking water per month based on the data we have of what production looks like in this part of Arizona over the course of the year.
Have you used these panels in Southern Arizona and other communities?
Yes, ma'am. We have approximately 2,000 households across the state of Arizona that are getting their drinking water supply from a hydro panel system installed at their residence. We have nearly 1,000 of those across Navajo Nation in partnership with their Department of Water Resources. We have approximately over 125 in Yuma County already through a previous grant program that the Local First Arizona organization ran to supply these to low-income households, which is how we started our partnership with the county. And we have, I think, over 300 in the county of Cochise County as well, operating today.
And how long have they been operating? I know
Those,
it's a range, I'm sure, but what's the range that these have been operating?
we have panels in operation, our headquarters in Arizona since 2018, but the sites I just listed were installed over the course of 2021 in Navajo Nation and 2023 and 2024 for Yuma, Cochise counties.
And is that where you came up with the figure of up to 60 gallons a month is what's being operated, these panels in these communities? That's the approximate or the average?
That's correct, ma'am.
Any other questions for the applicant? What areas, you said there's 200 households. How did you determine who you're going to target first and what areas are you targeting first?
All right, I may answer that, I believe. So we haven't, there's certain areas, in unincorporated areas in the county, rural areas that are far away from local, the city where they can go, where families rely on like water bottles to be able to get their drinking water. So but we will be putting in like an eligibility list for applicants to apply. We don't have the specific households eligible just yet. What we would do is we would open up the application portal and have applicants in collaboration with our nonprofit that we're collaborating with, Comité de Bienestar. They will be helping us put out the community outreach engagement for families that are in need of these hydro panels to apply for the program. And we will be basing the eligibility in determining, making sure that they're low-income families that are in need of this water source. And that their wells, we would have them do like a water well testing to ensure that there is an actual need for them to have this drinking water program in their homes.
Are these in areas that are not on like a public system or?
Correct, yes. They would all be under public or private well system.
Are there other questions for the applicant?
Yes, Richard, so it's 60 gallons a month. That's just drinking water for a household, right?
Yes, correct. That would just be for drinking.
And if my math's right, it'd be over a 15-year life period at 60 gallons a month. The cost per gallon of water would just be right, little over $1 a gallon. Is that what your figures come up to? You have 180 months times divided into each unit. Let's see, according to
I haven't done that math.
so it's about $10,000. So you're getting just over. You're getting 10,800 gallons, and each unit costs $10,000. So anyway, thank you.
Are there other questions? Either for staff or the applicant?
Drinking water. It is. But if that's what they need, no showers, no water in the pipes. Yeah, that's drinking water.
If there's no further discussion, questions, I'd seek a motion. There- This is just me talking out loud, as they say, thinking out loud as you all continue to mull it over. I have seen this technology. It's really impressive. It does seem that it is better in these rural, remote areas. You know, it's a tool for some individuals who are off public systems. It's kind of a unique way to structure it with the county. You know, it's different, I guess.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, Patrice.
You know, Patrice Horseman again. 60 gallons a month doesn't seem like a lot. And do you have any idea what the average needs of a person for a daily water basic needs is?
Members of the committee, this is Colin Goddard. I can answer that question.
Yes, please, Colin. Go ahead.
So the 60 gallons a month is the number that we've used, that we've seen in other states that have other drinking water delivery programs, following the kind of general metric of everyone should drink approximately 2 liters of water or 8 glasses of water a day for a family of 4 type metric.
Thank you for that. Other thoughts on this? we have a couple of options as discussed earlier on other applications. You can vote to approve, you can vote to deny, or we can table it. If we're not getting any movement, it'd be my inclination to table, but I think I'd rather have some sort of action, one way or the other. But I'm open to hearing what the committee has to say.
Mr. Chair, just a thought on that last question that Director Horstman had asked about what are the basic needs. With 60 gallons per month is 2 gallons per day. And the answer that we heard, which I think was a decent answer, which was this is consistent with what has been done elsewhere for a family of 4. That's a quart of water a day per person. I know my doctor wouldn't be happy if all I was drinking was a quart of water a day. But it's better than 0, I guess, and maybe it's better than driving somewhere and hauling water. But and I'm also some of us, hopefully all of us, are in receipt of a couple of letters that we've received on maybe not this project, but there's three of them today that is basically the same type of thing with some differences. I would actually like to have another look taken at this one and maybe the other 2 as well. This one, I believe, and one of the other 2 don't really have another supply other than hauling in some way. But would it make more sense to reevaluate this one and the other one that doesn't have another supply to look at, and this is going to be a difficult decision for somebody, more panels for fewer locations, so that maybe and maybe it's based on, and I realize, because I've got plenty of technical experience too, that unless you do every one the same, it makes it harder if they're customized. But maybe it matters how many people are living there. And a single person residence could maybe get by with 1 panel, and another residence might need 4 or 6. It might be more expensive to do it that kind of semi-customized like that. But as important as drinking water is for folks, and as convenient as it would be to have at their home, because they have no other way of getting it by driving somewhere or walking somewhere and getting it. But I'm not sure that necessarily some is better than none if the some is insufficient for the purpose that it's being applied to, which is drinking water. If there's not enough to go around, then are we going to find ourselves where folks today have this great inconvenience of going to pick up water, but at least they're going and getting what they need. Putting this thing in, there might be a mindset that this now satisfies my needs, and it really doesn't.
And it sounds like, based on what the applicant told us, that the participants have yet to be determined, that they will apply through a process through the county. So it's hard to know, sounds like who might be the recipients of it. Yes, Ms. Horst.
Yeah, thank you. And I did a little research because it's very interesting technology. And I think so many places that, especially on rural parts of Arizona, Navajo Nation and others, this is a very exciting technology that can be used. So I want to make that clear. I'm supportive of the efforts to do this. I did some research, and according to the UN, you need about 50 liters of water a day to meet basic needs for drinking, cooking, and cleaning. And I understand this is just, as stated, just for drinking. So it doesn't alleviate the need to haul water. And so that's, what my concern is. And then I guess, what's the best and highest use of the money to provide water for these communities. And I think that's what I am struggling with, to be honest with you. So love the technology, think it's very interesting, very exciting, especially for some of these rural areas where the need is so great. But I'm not sure what, by 2 panels a day, that it's going to really help or meet that basic need. That's what my concern is.
Mr. Chair, that, I guess,
Sure.
Ted and Ms. Patrice, I'm having the same deal. Have we really helped? I mean, yeah, we give them drink, but they're still gotta go someplace and get the rest of their needs. And so the technology is great. And if they had another source of water and they just, they needed drinking water, this kind of technology, but all the other needs, so they have these panels, and yet they're still having to do the same thing that they're doing right now. And I think we struggle with that, not knowing, and yet everybody ought to have water to take a bath in and drink and this, that, and the other. And I'm very sensitive to that because that's what we want to do. But right now, with my understanding of this, we're giving them a sawed-off crutch. And I'm just not sure that we've really solving a problem here. That's my concern. And I'm just being just being awful honest.
Mr. Chairman, if I may,
Yes, please, call.
thank you, members of the committee, for the discussion and conversation. I think a lot of great points were raised. Just want to reiterate the purpose of the partnership with the county was to improve access to clean drinking water at households that don't have that access currently due to poor quality from their well, because the intended population are people not connected to public water systems. The intention is not to fully provide the full amount of water needs for all all purposes, sorry, in a household per day, but really that consumptive need as a baseline. I think I think it's certainly relevant to ask, what would it take to provide, full water needs for many of the households, right, that are hauling their capabilities. I think that would be a different project with probably a different cost per home. And so this was an attempt to use a novel capability to ensure that at a minimum, a baseline of drinking water that follows kind of general, guidelines of 8 glasses of water a day is provided to each household. And the project that's structured, is for every household participating and is eligible, right, on income and water need to receive the same size system. But it is very simple to adjust that to make it based on household size and population. By keeping the same total amount of the budget the same and the amount of units the same, we can reduce the number of eligible participants in the program and create a very simple matrix that provides a system that meets the needs of the household population that is otherwise eligible. And we're very much open to those kind of improvements to the project design to ensure that an adequate drinking water supply is provided to Arizonans who need it.
Thanks for that.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Mr. Lawson.
So you're saying they have access to potable water, to water that they can do the other things. This is just to meet drinking water. They're not having to haul water, these households. They're not having to, I guess that would be my concern. I can understand the drinking water if it meets that need. But if it's not, they're still having to go other places to satisfy these needs, then have we really helped them? And I guess that's my concern.
Does the Colin, are you there? Are you able to respond to that?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for that question. we understand that is the case from our experience working in a lot of rural communities. Families are very accustomed to using different supplies of water for different purposes. And while the purpose of, the county's vision of this project was to provide the drinking water supply, right, to be a supplement to the other water supplies that those families use for various household or irrigation or agricultural purposes, the purpose of this one was to ensure, each household had a clean drinking water supply at a minimum, when their current supply, typically from a well with poor quality, not suitable for consumption purposes, right, isn't able to provide that currently.
I don't know if there's anyone from the county still on, but I just curious if there were other water supply options contemplated or in this process, or did you just feel like this technology was the best for the needs of Yuma?
Hello, yes, this is still Veronica Garcia. Yeah, that we didn't contemplate any other water supplies. This time we were just considering these water panels, like Colin mentioned, to provide good drinking water for these families that are in rural areas that are in need of this water.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, but if quality or something's a problem for $10,800, you can get filter systems and stuff like that will meet all their needs, and that's just a observation.
Note taken.
Other comments, questions? What's the will of the committee on this one? We can ask staff to review further, or we can make a decision.
Sure.
Yes, Mr. Cook.
After further discussion, I'm not sure, despite my earlier comments, whether or not further evaluation by the staff is going to yield any what I would consider to be defining information. I don't really see the purpose in tabling it for what, in that instance. I am not, and I don't sense that other committee members are comfortable with going forward with this because of these unanswered questions. And they're not really, that's not fair. They're not unanswered questions, they're just unsatisfactory answers. And those are two different things. I guess I will summarize what my earlier comment was, is some being better than nothing when the sum really doesn't satisfy the need that it's purported to satisfy is really not a good solution. And these despite the $1 per gallon metric, which I think is accurate, seems quite expensive for what you get. So I suppose that means I would move that we make a recommendation to deny this application. I hate to do it, but I think it's the right thing to do.
We've got a motion. Is there a second?
I will second that for discussion purposes.
Motion and a second. There's no further committee discussion. We'll call for a vote. All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstained?
And I will note for the record, Mr. Chairman, that Director Lyons is still not in the room, so he is abstained from this. He is recused from this item. Thank you.
Okay. Moving on to agenda item 11. Recommendation for approval of financial assistance resolution 2025-066, City of Cottonwood.
Before you start, Mr. Chair, do you want to move to the other hydro panel applications and take those since we're fresh on that discussion.
Let's do that. Which one's do that?
So, sorry, I didn't have my mic on. So we'll move to the other hydro panel applications. The first one would be item number 12 for Cochise County.
Yeah, let's move to, we'll skip agenda item 11 from just now. We'll move to agenda item 12. Lindsay?
Thank you. So Cochise County is proposing a similar solution as the Yuma County solution. They are requesting just over $1.9 million to equip 225 qualifying households with 2 of the hydro panel technologies. I think a lot of the information provided previously for the Yuma County remains the same regarding these hydro panels. I'm happy to take any questions for this application though.
Any questions for Lindsay? Any questions for the applicant? Any other comments? Do we have a motion on this item?
For the same reasons as the previous discussion and conclusions, I move that the committee recommended the board to deny application WSD 024-2025.
And I will second that.
We got a
Same reasons.
motion and a second. There's no further discussion. We'll call for the vote. All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstained? All right.
And I will note, Mr. Chairman, for the record, that Mr. Lyons did return just before the vote and so was able to participate in agenda item number 12.
Now, let's see here.
And then next will be number 14 for Y domestic improvement.
Moving on to, we'll skip over to agenda item 14. Approval for financial assistance resolution 2025-072, Y domestic water improvement district. Lindsay?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we have the WIFA, who has requested just over $670,000 to install 2 hydro panels at 75 of their households. This application is slightly different from the 2 county applications, as the WIFA is the public water provider for the area, and they're planning to provide these as backup redundant sources for their residents within the service area. So you may notice the scoring for this project was slightly lower than Yuma County or Cochise County's projects, and that is due to the differences in their approach, since they are providing panels to customers within their service areas. We have the financial review for the system. The DWID has 1 existing loan, which is set to mature in 2033. The cash flow is significant, for the last 5 years, ranged significantly, and the future cash flow is projected only to meet WIFA's requirements in 1 year. They are planning a rate increase in coming months, and pursuant to water supply procedures, this project could qualify for 100% grant consideration, and we should have the district manager available for any questions.
Do we have any questions first for Lindsay or with the staff? Any questions for the applicant? Any discussion on this item?
Mr. Chair, I hope this doesn't confuse an already confusing topic here, but I appreciate that Lindsay had pointed out for us that this one is different from the other 2 in that the DWID is the local water supplier. So unlike the other 2, at least I'm understanding this correctly, that this is a supplement to other supplies that this organization delivers. And I had a chance to get set straight on that from Lindsay before the board meeting this morning, because I had that same question. But my question was, why does this one have a lower score than the other 2? So I'm troubled with that because that gets back to the earlier part of this meeting when I expressed a lot of concern about the low scoring, lower priority projects, leapfrogging potentially higher priority projects. So I'm kind of torn about how I feel about this. And it makes a lot more sense to use this technology in a situation like this in my mind, but it doesn't have I forget what the score is on this, 230 or something like that out of 440. I'm probably wrong, but it's in that range. So I'd like to maybe hear from other committee members about that dilemma.
And maybe staff can walk us through that low scoring.
Yeah, absolutely. So the two county projects, when they are supplying, proposing to supply water to people not served by a public water system, are going to score higher in the project benefit points and the water demand scoring within our application. So that really is the big difference between the counties versus the DWID's application and why the scoring is different. Beyond that, there are some slight differences in how they respond to different parts of the application, the public comments received or some other portions of the application that can have slight differences in score, but the large difference between the counties versus the DWIDs was due to the project benefit scoring and the water demand scores. And that's because of the different nature of where the water supply would be benefiting.
And this is more of a backup rather than primary source.
Correct.
So, Mr. Chair, so I asked the question, how do we resolve this dilemma of my words, again, this technology application makes more sense in this context of being a part of another supply. So here's drinking water can be satisfied by this, and the other water supply can go to everything else that needs to happen. But that works backwards, actually, when it comes to the score, because they have another water supply. So for me, that kind of resolves this issue. That I do think that this project is more suitable for this technology than the two that we just turned down.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I agree that it is more suitable, at least than the ones we just turned down. I guess my question is, and I don't have enough information here to understand better, presumably the DWID has already analyzed this, why using this technology for these dollars is a better backup system than perhaps other things they could do. Because they talk about their aging system, the water being out for 99-day outage. So this looks like this is a pretty serious outage problem. So is there other things that could be done that might be a better use of these dollars, and have they looked at that? I guess I'd be interested to know that. Maybe the applicant can explain.
If we have somebody who represents the applicant.
Mr. Hadley, your mic is enabled, so you should be able to unmute and speak into the meeting.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead. Thank you.
Okay, so the outage that we were talking about for the 90 days, we're in the 5th year of the process of getting a grant to drill a new well, build a new treatment plant, upgrade our storage capacity, et cetera. When we were down for those 3 months, we were at the end of it 2 weeks away from having to close our doors, shut down the water supply for the town, and walk away. These panels would have enabled us to extend that end of life down probably an extra 30 to 60 days. Hauling water for us out here costs $17,000 over the course of 3 days. If we were able to supplement the water and only haul potable water, our costs would drop down by about 25%. But having to haul potable water to supply drinking water is really the purpose of this. Is we can save money, we can help the community, we can extend the life of everything just by having these panels in town. We only have 75 households. And it really is one of those things where we're such a small system that just even having these two panels would allow us to run our plant a few days to a week less a year, which doesn't seem like a lot. But when you're dealing with a system like this, it really does make a difference. And we actually have a few of the panels in town, so we know that they do work really well from a few of the residents that have them. And that's pretty much what all this is about, is just trying to give our residents some peace of mind. And for that, when our well does go down, and while we're waiting for all these other projects to come through, that they'd still have drinking water. Because the one big thing that we found out when we were really close to running out of water, there really isn't any emergency resources out there available to help us. We went through federal agencies, state, county. I was making 95 phone calls a day trying to find emergency funds to keep us going. And there is just nothing available out there. And that's really where this project came up when I met Colin and we started talking about it.
That's helpful. Thank you. Yes, Sue has a
Just
question.
one last question for you. I appreciate that. That was very helpful. When do you anticipate the new well and system is going to come online that you're working on right now?
So right now I have just finished submitting all of the items from the letter of conditions to USDA. And I know right now they're really bogged down. So we're anticipating the start of the bidding process in the next 60 to 90 days, completion of construction 2 years after that.
Other questions?
I don't mean to tell you how to run your business, but it seems to me like maybe this money would be better spent on maybe getting the second well and having something that would supply, would more adequately supply your needs other than just an emergency major. Like, or a tank or something like that. And please, I'm not trying to get into your business, but it seems like.
No, not at all. All points of view are valid in a situation like this, and I really appreciate any input. Unfortunately for us down here, it costs us about around $2.3 million to drill a well because we're 1,400 or 1,140 feet deep. So this is just a fraction of the cost of a well, and it really could save us a lot of money over the course of that 15 years. I think that's where we were really trying to push for this project.
Point well taken.
That's helpful. Other questions for the applicant? There's no discussion. I'd entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, this is a tough one, but I would move that we approve resolution 025-225 for the amount of $671,269 with the explanation that's been given.
I will second that.
We've got a motion and a second. If there's no further discussion, we'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstained? Motion passes. All right, we'll move back to agenda item 11. This is for a financial assistance resolution 2025-066, City of Cottonwood. Scott will lead us in the discussion.
I think that's a typo.
Oh.
But Scott will lead you in the last agenda item.
Okay, I had Scott was going to lead us.
Apologies.
Lindsay.
All right, so.
He's like,
We have the City of Cottonwood, who has requested just over $500,000. This project would fund groundwater recharge through an injection well to mitigate groundwater pumping from the regional aquifer. The applicant stated that implementing annual recharge of effluent will offset a portion of the current pumping, reduce localized depletion of the regional aquifer within the City of Cottonwood, and minimize potential impacts to the base flow of the Verde River. Between 2020 and 2024, the revenues for the city grew moderately while operating expenses increased. The decline in revenue was primarily due to a reduction in overall water delivery during that period of time. The city has implemented a rate increase for the water rates and connection fees ranging from 2020 to 2024 and is currently conducting a rate study as part of their water master plan. If the request was a loan, the annual debt service amount would exceed the projected revenues available for the debt service payments, and the city currently has 2 loans with WIFA, both of which are in good standings. Based on WIFA procedures, this project does qualify for 100% grant consideration, and I know we have the applicants in the room with us to answer any questions the committee may have.
Great. Do we have any questions from Lindsay or staff? Scott? Any questions for the applicant? Any other member discussion? If there's no discussion, I'd entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I would make a motion that we approve Finance Assistant Resolution 2025-066, City of Cottonwood, in the amount of $546,790.
We have a motion by Ms. Horstman. Do we have a second?
I'll second that, Richard Lunt.
Richard Lunt seconds. No further discussion. We'll call for the vote. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstained? All right, the motion passes. We've done item 12, so we'll go to agenda item 13. Recommend for approval financial assistance resolution 2025-071, Town of Duncan. Lindsay?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the town of Duncan is requesting just over $800,000 for multiple portions of this project. So the project would produce a preliminary engineering report, or PER, to support the future development of a wastewater reclamation facility, which would help advance the town's goal of achieving full wastewater connectivity and enhancing water reclamation for the Gila River recharge. Additionally, the town is requesting funds to connect 150 residences in the Hunter Estates system currently on septic systems to their municipal sewer system and to reline the current wastewater lagoon facility, which, as noted in the committee materials, can help improve water supplies in the future once the wastewater reclamation facility was built. The town of Duncan currently has debt with the USDA, which is set to mature in 2040, and historical financials show that there's been an increase in revenue and a reduction in expenses. And however, staff is still not able to meet the required debt service coverage if this were to be a loan. Projections show that Duncan will have a positive cash flow for the next 5 years, but will have very little room for any additional debt. Duncan did do a rate increase of 10% in 2023 and stated in future years that the council desires to update water rates using a phased approach. Pursuant to water supply procedures, this project does qualify for 100% grant consideration, and we should have the town manager online to answer any questions.
Thanks, Lindsay. Do we have any questions for Lindsay or WIFA staff? We've given Town of Duncan and a couple different pots of money. This is focused more on their wastewater system. Is that correct? It sounds like it's connecting folks that are on septic to their system, some upgrades there.
Correct.
That does sound like there will be some benefits though to the Gila River and some of their water resources or supplies. Other questions for Lindsay? Do we have questions for the applicant? Do we have any requests to speak?
We do not, Mr. Chair.
There's no further discussion. I'd entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, I would move that we for recommendation of approval of financial assistance resolution 2025 071, Town of Duncan, to the amount of $802 and $802,125.
Got a motion? Do we have a second?
Mr. Chairman, Sue Montgomery, second.
Motioned by Mr. Lunt, second by Sue Montgomery. If there's no further discussion, we'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstained? Motion passes. We've done agenda item 14, so we'll move to agenda item 15. Recommendation for approval of financial assistance resolution 2025-075, Town of Parker. The Colorado River Sewage System Joint Venture. Lindsay.
Thank you, sir, and I'll actually turn this over to Mr. Scott Connolly.
Thank you, Lindsay. So the applicant is requesting $5 million in financial assistance, up to a $3 million loan and $2 million grant to upgrade and expand the system's wastewater plant's capacity while enhancing its resiliency and sustainability. The project will include the installation of systems to improve waste management, backup power to ensure continuous operation during outages, and climate resiliency to protect against environmental stresses. Project benefits include providing increased high-quality effluent for recharging Colorado River, along with using reclaimed water for agricultural, industry, and environmental purposes. The Town of Parker, along with the Colorado Indian Tribes, formed a joint venture in 1973 for the purpose of providing wastewater treatment to tribal lands and the Town of Parker. The joint venture has been responsible for the operation and maintenance of the system, including the billing and collection of user fees. For this financial assistance request, the joint venture is not an authorized borrower, so the Town of Parker will be the applicant. However, the joint venture will be the entity that will be providing the dedicated revenue source of repayment and will backstop this loan. In August of 2019, the joint venture implemented a rate increase, but due to the system's age and deteriorating mechanical condition that resulted in significantly higher ongoing operating expenses, the system that since 2003 has resulted in negative operating revenues. The system has reached the end of its useful life and complete replacement is necessary to ensure long-term reliability, efficiency, and financial stability. Future financial projections rely on cost estimates provided by the manufacturer of the new modular system, and under these conditions, the joint venture returns to positive cash flows after completion of the project, and debt service coverages result greater than 1.3 times. The project is estimated at $26 million, and the joint venture is actively working to secure other sources of funding. Their current efforts include $2 million requested through congressionally directed spending, this $5 million water supply development application, and applying for nearly $12.5 million from the EPA Tribal Clean Water Set-Aside Grant. The project manager was Lindsay Mills, the loan officer is Channing Lester, and we do have online Laura Yackney, the town manager, and John Luther, the grant writer.
Thank you. Scott, do we have questions for Scott or staff on this one?
Yes. You said that's a $26 million venture and so we do this. I imagine this is in phases. Is the money secured for the rest of the phases or, because if we do this and let's say they can't secure any more money, our money is spent and
I
used?
would actually probably direct that question to the applicants. They can answer in a lot more detail.
If the applicant's available, answer that question.
Mr. Luther, your mic is enabled. You just need to unmute yourself, and then you're welcome to speak into the meeting.
Yes, thank you very much, and hello to the committee. Just a quick point of clarification, actually some good news. Our project has decreased in total project cost. It currently sits at a project cost of $20.6 million. To answer the committee's question, this would be the first significant funding for this project, which is a critical project. Both the town of Parker and the Colorado River Indian tribes, which are joint users of this utility, are obligated per an operating agreement dating back to 1969 to provide capital support for this project. This is town of Parker's efforts to do so. And so both entities are actively and very actively, I might say, fundraising for this project, as this is a critical need for the community.
Thank you.
Are there other questions for the applicant? Other comments, discussion? Not, I'd entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, once again, they're not asking all in grant, there is a loan, there again, it's a rural, they need support, and so with that, I would move that we, approve the recommendation for financial assistance for 2025-075 Town of Parker, Colorado River Sewage System Joint Venture for $5 million. I believe that's 2 million loan, 2 loan and 2 million grant, 3 million loan. Got to reverse that.
We've got a motion by Mr. Lunt. Do we have a second?
I'd second that.
Horstman has seconded. If there's no further discussion, we'll call for the vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No abstentions, then the motion passes. We're through with the regular agenda items. Let's go to agenda item number 16, call to the public. Have we received any public comments?
We've not, Mr. Chair. I do want to mention, however, we received one for agenda item number 12. The commenter wasn't able to be in the meeting, but committee members did receive her comments via email, so we're still able to get that into the record. I just was remiss in noting that when that agenda item came forward.
Okay. Thank you. Then we'll move to agenda item 17, the agenda development. This is an opportunity for members to direct staff on any topics they'd like to be placed on a future agenda. I think some of our earlier discussions, I think it'd be helpful if staff maybe explored some funding cycles on the Water Supply Development Fund, maybe some alternative ways to approach our applications. Just maybe give us some other options on how maybe some other states are doing things and how we might consider doing things, and put that on a future agenda. Are there other items that the staff or the members would like to see?
Mr. Chairman, I assume we're going to be hearing from Denise the latest on on your quandaries, to put it mildly.
Denise, I got a set of dice if you want me.
Bring your crystal ball.
Sounds good. Any clarification, staff? You think you're good there to? Okay.
Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Then we'll move to agenda item 18, our next meeting. We're planning on May.
That is correct. We will poll the committee as per usual to determine the best course of action for the date of that meeting in May. But as mentioned before, given the fact that July will require this committee to make some pretty important decisions regarding current resolutions that will expire, the path forward that the committee would like to take, this made sense as one more committee meeting before then to consider applications, and then another 2 months of committee meeting in July. So that is what we plan right now. Be on the lookout for our asks of your availability sometime in May.
Great, thank you. Any questions there?
So you send
Your mic on.
saying March 19th?
Junior, your mic on.
You had an email saying that the next meeting for the water supply development would be March 19th?
That is today, is March 19th, yep.
Do you want to come back?
Do it all over again, yes it has.
That's why you make the big.
understanding that it's been a long day, we will adjourn this meeting. The time is now 4:10. Thank you.
Thank you, committee.
Thanks, all, man.